Tomorrow marks the 10th anniversary of the attacks on the United States on September 11th in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. So many people have vivid memories of the events surrounding that day, now 1 decade ago. Reporter Peggy Weber shares with us now how September 11th, 2001 touched some parishioners at St. Charles Parish in Pittsfield.
Ruslana Dekhtar knows if she did not oversleep on September 11th, 2001, she would probably be dead. She worked as a receptionist in the North Tower of the World Trade Center on the 77th floor. Frank Rizzo watched the second plane, Flight 175, fly into the South Tower of the World Trade Center from his office window. He then fled Manhattan across the Brooklyn Bridge and thought he might be crushed to death by a stampeding crowd. Both, though, survived and have been united through the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults, RCIA, at St. Charles Parish in Pittsfield. It is a special experience for Frank, Ruslana, and Sister Barbara Fye, a pastoral associate.
The Lord sends people who are totally strangers who come together and grow into friendships as their faith journeys are shared.
She says she doesn't recall how September 11th came up at their weekly meetings, but the topic struck a chord.
I think this year they touched one another's lives and could speak of that with a sense that maybe someone understood.
It is remarkable that many miles away from New York City, a bond has been formed. Ruslana, now 27, had just graduated from high school shortly before September 11th and was working as a receptionist in a law office. She grew up in Brooklyn, an only child. She and her parents had moved from Kiev, Russia in 1989. She said her hometown was about 100 miles from Chernobyl, the site of the nuclear power plant disaster, and her parents wanted her to move somewhere safer. A month away from her 19th birthday, she encountered another disaster.
I remember being late for work, so I was getting ready very quickly, and then my mother's like, "You're not going anywhere." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She listened to the Russian radio, and they said that pieces of flesh were falling from the sky.
She says she turned on the television set and saw images of the first tower in flames.
I was supposed to be there, and I just sat there for hours, not saying anything, just looking, watching, trying to call all my coworkers, friends who I knew worked there, and I couldn't reach anybody.
She would learn that none of her coworkers made it out alive.
I was shocked. I think I was in a bit of traumatic shock because I couldn't move. My mom gave me, I think she gave me tea and tried to make me feel better. I just sat there. I will never forget that day. I should have been there. I would have actually been about 15 minutes into my workday.
One of her best friends was at work. He was 17 and an intern at the office. He didn't make it out.
I got him that job, so a form of guilt was there because I was like, I'm almost responsible for him not being here today. I wish that things were different. I remember for 1 month I wished it was me and not him because he was one of my best friends. So, but for some reason I'm here.
Frank's memories of that September day are just as vivid. Born and bred in Queens, Frank had recently moved to upstate New York and was commuting into work from one of his children's homes on Long Island. He recalls it being a gorgeous day, following some violent thunderstorms the previous night.
And I'm walking through the canyons of Wall Street going, God is good, what a great day.
He arrived at his office at 8:15 a.m., and about a half hour later, a young man told him that a private plane had flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
And I'm going, what idiot on this beautiful day would run into these big towers?
He said workers gathered at their office window. They were on the 35th floor of a building about 6 blocks away.
And we were there no more than 2 or 3 minutes. And as we were looking at that plane coming up, trying to figure out how this idiot flew into it, a jumbo 767 suddenly appears in front of us. It's about at the 50th floor level. I mean, it was the most surreal thing I've ever seen. I mean, I'm in New York City, born and bred, pretty tough in a lot of ways. I mean, in a positive sense. It was surreal. People just, I mean, it looked at that and you couldn't believe it and was heading toward the World Trade Center. And the wingspan on that plane was exactly identical to the width of the building. And when it went in, it was perfect. You knew this was not an accident. It went in for maximum impact, and within 30 seconds, that plane was swallowed up. I mean, disappeared. And I turned to everyone and said, my instincts, having been raised in this city, just my gut said, we are under attack. We need to get off Manhattan Island. I'm coming downstairs. You're welcome to come with me.
He says he did fear that the buildings might topple, but he thought they would fall sideways and hit him as he made his way to the Brooklyn Bridge.
In no way did I think that those towers were going to come down the way they did.
Just as he got to the bridge, one of the towers collapsed. Everybody near the bridge was staring up, and then he said he saw a herd of people running from the World Trade Center in a cloud of dust.
But when I saw these people charging at us, I said, we're done. And I can't blame these people. They're running for their lives. We're going to get trampled to death. As they reached the ramp, it was almost like God had put his hand out. They stopped and walked across the bridge.
He says he will never forget that day.
It was an unbelievable experience because behind us, and everybody's in tears. People are jumping out of the World Trade. I mean, just imagining that, but seeing some of that, I mean, people's heartstrings were a mess.
Frank notes that even a few years later, every time he saw a plane nearby, he would flinch. He also recalled coaching many of the firefighters who perished that day.
Some parishes had 20 and 30 firemen that died there. And I can't even imagine the heroism.
He said that he also recalls how people got along and went to church following the events of September 11th. However, he said those effects do not seem to have lasted too long, and he hopes that this anniversary might bring more people back to God. Ruslana says that her journey to God through the RCIA program at St. Charles has done just that.
When I walked in here, I met Sister Barbara and Father Peter. I felt like I was home. I've never felt more at peace as when I'm sitting in this room or in the church.
Father Peter feels connected to September 11th on many levels. He's an Air Force veteran and chaplain for the Pittsfield Firefighters and the Pittsfield American Legion. He says that people must remember September 11th, no matter how painful the memories.
Certainly being an instrument of never giving up and despairing, but let us be people of hope, and that we had to remember those that lost their lives as well as the families.
Ruslana says she will travel to Ground Zero this year, as she has for many years, with her mother. It is a day many will remember. It is when tragedy struck New York City, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. Really, all of America. And it is a special, sad memory shared in sorrow and prayer by a Berkshire parish. For Real to Real, I'm Peggy Weber.